to your understanding. I want to know your heart, oh Lord. Father, help me hear your voice. Awaken my ear to hear as the learning, morning by morning. Make your word clear, then open my mouth to speak as the learning, a word in its season to the weary heart. Awaken my ear, awaken my ear. Wisdom I seek, and to discern. Create in me a heart that is holy. I lift my voice to understand. Father, lead me by your hand. Awaken my...
Hello and welcome to Holy Impact Ministries Bible Study Night. God bless you. I'm Pastor Scott Velain with HolyImpactMinistries.com, and we're glad to have you here with us this evening. It is Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and again, we will be diving into Acts chapter 19, and we will be journeying with Paul throughout Ephesus, and I think you're going to find this a very interesting Bible study, so we're glad to have you with us here this evening. And we are just going to kind of move into some things here before we get started. I have a lot of different things I kind of want to share with you. The website is going very well. We've been working on that diligently. We were thinking that we were going to probably get that website up and running within the next 30 to 60 days. It may come as early as this weekend. So we've really been blessed. Brother Dustin Hinkle has been helping us with our graphics, and we have gotten some help with some other things as well. These domain server names and all of this transferring that we've had to do and all that other kind of stuff. Still some bugs to work out. Don't know if we're going to have it this weekend or not. Don't hold me to that, but it's looking like we may have it up and running. I'm going to take you over and show you the new website a little bit, at least give you the idea what it will look and feel like, and some of the things that we have there. So I got that for you that I want to run through, and I just want to say hi to everybody out there. Who do we have here? Donald Bailey. Don, how are you, Brother Don? Brother Don's been here, and I have just got into the seat and was sitting down. He's been waiting for this Bible study, and it is so good to see Brother Don here. Who else we have here? Olga's here. Brother Jamie's here. Awesome. We've got the chat room is people are starting to come in. You know, Wednesday nights, we usually don't have as big a crowd as we do on our 7-day Sabbath because it's the middle of the week. And there are Brother Tito and many others can't attend because they're in a different time zone, and they're different places, being in the UK and being in London and being in some people even being over in Pakistan, and we even have viewers that come in from China and that, so they don't get to be with us a lot of the times in the chat room on a Wednesday night because it's the middle of the week, and I understand that, but it's good to see everybody for sure. Before we get too far entrenched in things, it has just been a wonderful last couple of weeks. You know, the beginning of this year, we really hit the deck running. And we have a lot of upgrades that we're trying to do here at the ministry, and we're trying to get ourselves to where we can be positioned to reach more people. And we have more people coming on board, more people supporting us, more people praying with us, and it really is making a huge difference. We are way ahead in schedule, and things are going very well. So I just want to say thank you for those of you who support us, and those of you who are praying for us to be able to excel and to get these things done, because it's happening, and we have been just massively blessed this last week. And I just want to say thank you, Yahovah God, in the name of Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus Christ. These things are actually coming to fruition, and we're really excited about them. So with that being said, let me take you over to the website here very quickly, just for any new viewers that we may have with us here this evening. Again, this is our Wednesday night Bible study. We hope that you have your highlighters and your paper and your pen and your Bibles with you, your electronic devices. Again, we always want everybody to have a hard copy of everything, just in case the lights do go out. We will still have hard copies of things. But at any rate, this is the website, and this is how you get a hold of us. And you can get a hold of us through the website here on Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's our Bible Studies night. And then we also have another broadcast that we do on Saturday mornings at 9 a.m. And this is how you can get a hold of us. You can always email me at pastorv@holyimpactministries.com. We have our subscription letter here and pretty much just everything you need. Now, this website that I'm showing you here right now is going to be taken down fairly soon, but the next one's going to kind of look like it. And let me take you over to the new website. I'll give you a sneak peek of what it's going to look like. Here's what we have been working with here, and this is what we are going to. This is the new website that we will have. And again, it's a little bit more colorful, a little bit more polished, a little bit more professionally done. And you can kind of go through this and just kind of look. I just kind of wanted to kind of waltz you through here. We still have our subscription letter. Of course, if you'd like to donate to the ministry, you certainly can do that as well. So this is the look and the feel. We'll have a teachings page, and on our teachings page, where we had things kind of all over the place, we now have them nice and neat. Right here in this drop-down menu, you can check out the different categories here. We have God's laws, we have God's appointments, different teachings on God's appointments, different teachings on pagan holidays, different teachings on false doctrines, miscellaneous studies that we have here. So we have these, and these will be filling up. Of course, God's laws is our 5-part series that really kicked off Holy Impact Ministries a couple of years ago. When we did this 5-part series, God's laws still stand, and we're just about ready to update that and to redo that again. So that will be here as well. And we also have our Bible study page. That will be right here. And we will also have a chat room right here built into the Bible study. So the chat room will be right here for you. And then we also have our Bible studies down here at the bottom. We have the book of Acts, and all of our PDFs will be right there. Easy to find. So much nicer and neater. Is nicer a word? Nicer, I think so. But it's just going to be so much more polished, so much more categorized, easier for everyone to use. So we're really excited about getting this up and getting the chat room up and running, and getting all of this stuff set up. A Seventh-day Sabbath, again, we will have that as well. And that'll be pretty much the same with the chat room there as well. And all of our Seventh-day Sabbath studies that we have, different topics that we've talked about on the Seventh-day Sabbath will be there. We will also have our church history page, very important for Christians today, to know and to understand their church history. And so many Christians just don't understand church history. And we've thrown in some extra things in our church history there as well. How to make unleavened bread, how to make a menorah, different little things there. You'll find some nifty little things there as well on our church history page. What we believe also, we'll have a statement of facts, what we believe and what our beliefs are here at Holy Impact Ministries. And you'll be able to go down through this and read this as well. And this is all pretty nicely done. We've got this pretty well polished up and as decent as we can possibly make it. And then on top of that, then we just have, I just also put a little piece in here about Pastor V. A lot of people want to know my background, where I come from, how I became a pastor, these types of things. So that'll be there as well. So, and that is the new website, and that's what it's going to look like. And this is what we've been working on so diligently, trying to get this up and running. We had to change the domain server, a lot of things behind the scenes. We had to enter in all the data and all this other kind of stuff and get all the links put together. A lot of that still needs work. But it is coming along pretty well. So this is what we are moving to, and we hope that you like it. But I wanted to give you a sneak peek of what was going on behind the scenes. And this is why, by the way, that I have not been able to answer my emails. And it has been every minute of every waking day this weekend, 48 hours straight, trying to get all of this done and get it all put together and get everything, all the data and all the links made and all that kind of stuff. So it's a lot of work, but I think it's really going to be worth it. And I think that you're going to be able to be proud of this website, to point your family and your friends to the website, and it'll be easy to navigate. And the chat rooms will be there. It'll be more inclusive, and I think it'll really do us a great service. And it's something that we needed to do. In the beginning of this year, it was just time to do it. And I knew that it was going to be a big push, and I knew it was going to be difficult at the onset. But with your prayers and with your support, we have just about made it. We're just about there to get it up and to actually launch it. We're hoping that there's not a lot of bugs and that type of thing. Anytime you launch a website, you'll find these bugs. This takes too long to download. This isn't right, one thing or another. So we're going to have to get through those as well. But we are moving in the right direction, and it shouldn't be too very long before we have it up and have it running. And we're just so excited about that. And again, we just want to thank you for your patience as well. I know so many of you have been looking at the subject matter in the emails just to make sure that there wasn't an emergency, somebody needed prayer, or one thing or another. And so I've been kind of looking at them, but I haven't had time to actually sit down and respond to a lot of the questions that you've been sending in. So please, again, I ask just for a little bit more patience while we get this done and get this up and off the ground. Then we think the waters will kind of calm back down just a little bit. This website has really thrown a rock in my pond, so to speak, and there's just chaos everywhere. But it's exciting, and it's a great thing that is coming down the pipe. So with all of that being said, that's how you get a hold of us. That's where we're at. That's what the new website's going to look like. Until then, we still have the old site, and it is very functional. You can still go to our HIM Bible studies. You can go to our Seventh-day Sabbath, church history. We still have those things here at the old website as well. So nothing is going to go down. Hopefully, everything will keep up and running until we get that new website in, and it'll just be the snap of a fingers, and it'll be running. At least that is the plan. So with your prayers, hopefully it will all pan out that way. But Yah's been with us on this, and it has been just such a blessing. It really has been a blessing. And so again, just wanted to thank you for that. Now, with all of that being said, let's go ahead and let's check out Acts chapter 19, because this is very important, this Acts chapter 19 that we're going into. This is actually part 3 of Acts chapter 19. And there's some important things here that we need to see, and I think you're going to be really interested in learning a little bit about what they really believed in Ephesus and what Paul was going through. So I hope you have a cup of coffee, your highlighters. We're going to actually move into Acts chapter 19. So moving into the third part of Acts chapter 19, it's important to remember what had happened last week. And in the first part of Acts chapter 19. Now, last week we talked a little bit about the sons of a Jewish exorcist by the name of Sceva. And these 7 sons were trying to expel a demon from a man by using the name that Paul always used to expel demons with. Now, the name full of power and glory, of course, was the name of our Messiah, Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus Christ. And so this is the name that they were trying to use. And as we saw last week, this really didn't go very well for those 7 sons of Sceva. When the demon heard these men using and proclaiming the word or the name Yeshua, the demon told them that Yeshua he knew and Paul he recognized. But then he turned to the 7 sons of Sceva and said, "But who are you?" Upon which time the demon stripped them of their clothes and beat them to within an inch of their lives. And so last week, we spoke a little bit about these different things. And there were several different things that we spoke about. We spoke about how Paul separated the Jews, and took the believing Jews out of the synagogue so that they could hear the gospel message without being ridiculed by those who did not believe. And we spoke a little bit about how unusual that was for Paul to do that. We also spoke about the cloth that belonged to Paul that was healing people. Just by the touch of this cloth, they were being healed and demons were coming out of them. We also talked about these 7 sons of Sceva who foolishly thought that they could use the name of Yeshua and kind of toss that around like some kind of token power without really understanding who Yeshua was. This week, we're going to take a bit of a look into the aftermath of what took place last week. When the people saw this demon overpower these 7 men and strip them down naked and beat them to a pulp, word spread pretty fast. And it wasn't very long before we're told that everyone who was into practicing magic arts brought their books together and put them in a pile and burned them. So, before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's go back, and I want us to read the second half of chapter 19, just so that we can kind of get our bearings and get a better understanding of what's going on up to this point. So let's go back here very quickly. I'm going to take you over to Eastward, which is the Bible application that we use. And I just want to read this. Let's just read down through. We're going to start here with verse 18, and let's just refresh ourselves with what's going on here. So it says in Acts chapter 19, verse 18, "Also many of those who were now believers came confessing and divulging their practices." Now again, this is just after this had just happened with these 7 sons of Sceva trying to get this demon out of this particular man by using the name of Yeshua. And of course, the demon just goes off on him and just chases them out, strips them down naked, beats them within a half inch of their lives. And this is what happens in the aftermath of that. It says, "Also, many of those who were now believers came confessing and divulging their practices. And a number of those who had practiced magic arts brought their books together and burned them in the sight of all. And they counted the value of them and found it came to 50,000 pieces of silver. So the word of the Lord continued to increase and prevail mightily." Now after these events, Paul resolved in the Spirit to pass through Macedonia and Achaia and to Jerusalem, saying, "After I've been there, I must also see Rome. And having sent into Macedonia 2 of his helpers, Timothy and Erastus, he himself stayed in Asia for a while. About that time there rose no little disturbance concerning the way." Now remember, the way were the believers, and that's what they were called. They weren't called Christians, they were called the way. "For a man named Demetrius, a silversmith, who had silver shrines of Artemis." Now Artemis was a goddess. We're going to talk a little bit about her this evening as well. So a man by the name of Demetrius, a silversmith, who had made silver shrines of Artemis, brought no little business to the craftsmen. These he gathered together with the workmen in similar trades and said, "Men, you know that from this business we have our wealth. And you see and hear that not only in Ephesus, but in almost all of Asia, this Paul has persuaded and turned away a great many people, saying that gods made with hands are not gods. And there is a danger not only that this trade of ours may come into disrepute, but also that the temple of the great goddess Artemis may be counted as nothing, and that she may even be disposed from her magnificence, she whom all Asia and the world worship." When they heard this, they were angered, and they were crying out, "Great is Artemis of the Ephesians!" So the city was filled with confusion, and they rushed together into the theater, dragging with them Gaius and Aristarchus, Macedonians who were Paul's companions in travel. Now they had this Gaius and this Aristarchus. I always have a hard time with that. Aristarchus, and say that 3 times fast. These 2 came from Macedonia to help Paul in Ephesians. Here they are, and they're now all of a sudden they're just getting drug into this theater with this whole mob now that's all upset because Paul is preaching a gospel that is pretty much doing away with their main goddess. And I'm going to show you how big this goddess was in Ephesus. You're going to be amazed at why all of this was happening. So stick with me. Okay, so it says, but when Paul wished to go in among the crowd, the disciples would not let him. And even some of the Azarics, who were friends of his, sent to him and were urging him not to venture into the theater. Now some cried out one thing, and some cried another, for the assembly was in confusion, and most of them did not know why they had even come together. Some of the crowd prompted Alexander, whom the Jews had put forth, and Alexander, motioning with his hand, wanted to make a defense to the crowd. But when they recognized that he was a Jew, for about 2 hours they all cried with one voice, "Great is Artemis of the Ephesians." And when the town clerk had quieted the crowd, he said, "Men of Ephesus, who is there who does not know that the city of Ephesians is temple keeper of the great Artemis and of the sacred stone that fell from the sky? Seeing that these things cannot be denied, you ought to be quiet and do nothing rash. For you have brought these men here who are neither sacrilegious nor blasphemers of our goddess. If, therefore, Demetrius and the craftsmen with him have a complaint against anyone, the courts are open, and there are proconsuls. Let them bring charges against one another. But if you seek anything further, it shall be settled in the regular assembly. For we really are in danger of being charged with rioting today, since there is no cause that we can give to justify this commotion." And when he had said these things, he dismissed the assembly. Okay, so a lot going on here. So once again, after this incident with the demon-possessed man, we're told that those who were into practicing magical arts brought their books and they burned them. And I want us to understand just how many books there were. There were a lot of magical books that they had brought. We're told that there were so many books that they were worth about 50,000 pieces of silver. Now, these pieces of silver were called drachma. So these books were worth about 50,000 drachma. And the normal wage for a day's work back then was about 1 drachma. That's what you made for a day's wage. So we can get some kind of an idea of how expensive these books actually were. Now, another thing that seems pretty evident here is just how much of this magical art these magical arts were being practiced in Ephesus. It should be fairly easy for us to see how entrenched in these kinds of pagan practices that these people were. And it's important to understand that these kind of practices were considered normal for this culture, much like devil worshiper is becoming for our culture today. Alternate lifestyles and pagan practices were all the rage back in those days, so much so that we can see these men who were manufacturing idols for a living became enraged at Paul for bringing this new gospel message to the people of their town. Imagine that. A God made with hands is no God at all. This was a shock to many of the people that lived in Ephesus, and many of them who had always worshipped these kinds of man-made idols and gods and goddesses. They'd never heard about a God that they couldn't see or touch or bow down in front of. Everyone had a little mini-god in their home back in those days, and they even made shrines in their homes to bow down in front of and to light candles to and to pray to these man-made gods. And the men who manufactured these little wooden and brass idols were getting pretty fat off the deal. So it shouldn't have really been much of a surprise that when Paul's gospel message started to put these men out of business, that there was going to be a little blowback. But what's really surprising is that archaeology today is now uncovering many of the sarcophagi that these Jewish rabbis were buried in. And what they've been finding is they're finding their tombs are decorated not only with menorahs, but they're also decorated with pagan symbols too. This system of caves at a place called the Beit Sharin in Israel holds several different tombs of highly revered rabbis. And it's clear that they had joined Jewish things with pagan things, much like Christianity has done today. You see, the pagan practices that we find in Christianity today are much the same as the pagan practices that we find in yesterday, back in Paul's time. It's never gone away. And it's just like Solomon said, there is nothing new under the sun. Syncretism was the name of the game back then, just like it's the name of the game for Christianity today. Many of the prestigious rabbis back in that time had one foot in Judaism and the other foot in paganism. And many of them went to their graves that way. And today's pastors, priests, bishops, and popes are no better. Most of our over 5,000 different Christian denominational charters of men are still infested with many of the same pagan symbols, rituals, traditions, and myths that the people of Ephesus were playing with. Sure, the names have been changed to protect the guilty, but nevertheless, the idols and paganry that modern-day Christian plays with today are no less lethal than the idols and paganry that they were playing with in Paul's time in Ephesus. You know, we think oftentimes that it's funny and that it's strange how those people back in Paul's time could have ever bowed down in front of a wooden idol. And yet, we bow down in front of a wooden idol in our homes every Christmas. We think it's funny and we think it's strange how those people could have had those wooden and brass idols in their homes, and yet we have little ceramic statues of Santa Claus and Rudolph and the Easter Bunny and all kinds of idols in our homes every holiday. You know, we think it's funny and strange how those people could have built up shrines in their homes with these wooden and brass idols, and yet we build shrines in our homes and even in our front yards and in our town squares every pagan holiday that comes along. And we don't think anything of it. Why do we think the Christmas tradition is to put your Christmas presents under the Christmas tree in the first place? It's so that you and your children have to bow down to the tree in order to get your gift. What does the Bible say about cutting down trees and dragging them into your house and decking them with silver and gold? Well, I want us to turn to Jeremiah chapter 10, verses 2 through 4. So we can do that just very quickly. And you may have heard this before, but I think it's worth mentioning again. Just to kind of show you that there really is not a lot of difference between what was going on in Ephesus and what's going on in our world and in our time today. So let's read that. Jeremiah, and it's going to be chapter 10, verse 1. Let's read this. It says, "Hear the word that Yahovah speaks to you, O house of Israel. Thus says Yahovah, learn not the way of the nations, nor be dismayed at the signs of the heavens, because the nations are dismayed at them. For the customs of the people are vanity. A tree from the forest is cut down and worked with an axe by the hands of an axeman. They decorate it with silver and gold. They fasten it with hammer and nails, so that it cannot move." Now, my friends, I can't tell you how many times I've heard pastors try to squirm out of that one. And as soon as they're done squirming, I go ahead and present them with Jeremiah 2:20 and Jeremiah 3:6 and Deuteronomy 12:1. In fact, let me introduce those things to you just in case you've never seen them before. Very quickly here, let me show you this slide that we have here. Here it is. Jeremiah 2:20. Let's read this. "For long ago I broke your yoke and burst your bonds, but you said, I will not serve. Yes, on every high hill and under green tree you bowed down like a whore." How about Jeremiah 3:6? "The Lord said to me in the days of King Josiah, have you seen what she did, that faithless one Israel? How she went up on every high hill and under every green tree and played the whore." Deuteronomy 12:1. "These are the statutes and the rules that you shall be careful to do in the land that Yahovah, the God of your fathers, have given you to possess all the days that you live on the earth. You shall surely destroy all the places where the nations whom you shall dispossess serve their gods, on every high mountain and on the hills and under every green tree. You see, it was common practice to bow down under these green trees, so that you kind of think that this maybe reminds, do you think, our Father, when he sees us bowing down and our children bowing down to get our presents out of underneath these trees, what do we think that reminds him of? I just want us to see these scriptures, and I want us to know these scriptures. And I hear pastor after pastor after pastor trying to squirm out of these things, and I've even heard pastors say, well, you have to carve it into an idol or it doesn't count. It doesn't say that. It says they cut down the tree, they dragged it in, and they decked it with silver and gold. It doesn't say anything about cutting it into an idol. And it doesn't say anything about carving these trees that are up on hills into idols, does it? Absolutely, it does not. So again, they are adding to the Word of God instead of understanding what the Word of God says and taking it for what it says as truth. And this again, we see this time and time and time and time again. They will just try to say whatever they want to say to try to justify what they're doing. And it should be evident that what they're doing is paganry. It is a pagan practice. You just cannot get away from it, my friends. It is a pagan practice. I want us to take a look at what's written in their own Catholic Encyclopedia, 1911 edition, under Christmas. So if we go to the Catholic Encyclopedia, this is a quote from the Catholic Encyclopedia, 1911 edition. It says this: Christmas was not among the earliest festivals of the Church. The first evidence of the feast is from Egypt. Christmas, that whole paganry, that whole thing, is from Egypt, says the Catholic Church, who created Christ Mass. Okay, so according to them, according to their own encyclopedia, it comes from Egypt. Further, it says pagan customs centering around the January calends gravitated to Christ Mass, and they called it Christ Mass. It is paganry. They even admit it in their own Catholic Encyclopedia. It's right in front of our faces, my friends. Now, knowing that this practice, this pagan practice of trees and bowing down to get your presents out underneath the trees and decking it with silver and gold and all that comes from Egypt, according to the Catholics who created this pagan holiday and drug it into Christianity, okay? Now you know that Christmas comes from Egypt. According to the people who drug it into Christianity in the first place, I want us to now go look at and see what the Bible has to say about traditions that are found in Egypt. Let's turn to Leviticus chapter 18, verse 2, very quickly. We're going to go to Leviticus, and we're going to go to chapter 18, verse 2. What does it say? Speak to the people of Israel and say to them, I am Yahovah your God. You shall not do as they do in the land of Egypt. Can we read that again? Let's read it again. Speak to the people of Israel and say to them, I am Yahovah your God. You shall not do as they do in the land of Egypt, where you lived, and you shall not do as they do in the land of Canaan, which I am bringing you. You shall not walk in their statutes. You shall follow my rules, keep my statutes, and walk in them. I am the Lord your God. Now, bowing down before a tree to accept a gift is nothing more than our adversary slapping our Father in the face with the memory of what his wicked children had done. We as Christians are not asked to are not to ask how these other nations serve their gods. We are not to do as they do. We are not to worship our God in that way. And for more on that, you can read Deuteronomy chapter 12, verses 28 through 32. And we won't even get into Good Friday, Lent, Easter, Valentine's Day, and Halloween. We've got videos on that. You can go to the website, you can watch those, and we'll show you the historical documentation about those things if you have never heard these things before. Now, the point that I'm trying to make here this evening is that nothing has changed, my friends. Nothing has changed. It's just the same today as it was back in Paul's time. And it's important for us to understand that what we're reading here today in Acts chapter 19 is not so far away. It's not so far away from us that we should think that it is. It is very close to us. Humanity is humanity. These people that Paul was dealing with are not so different from people today in our time and in our culture and in our society. Even here in America, it has been said by priests and presidents that we are no longer a Christian nation. And I fear that even though as much as 73% of Americans still profess to be Christians, a much smaller percentage really even know what it means to be a Christian. And so, just like both Jew and Gentile back in Paul's time, we're playing around with pagan things. We're doing the exact same thing in our time, playing around with pagan things. Nothing has changed, my friends. And just like those rabbis whose tombs are found littered with menorahs and pagan symbols, so too are there Christians today who will go to their graves with pictures of crosses and Christmas trees in their coffins, just like those old rabbis of Ephesus. Don't be fooled, my friends. The principalities in high places that made war with the saints back in Paul's day are alive and well in our day just the same. So, getting back to Acts chapter 19, we know that many of these people burned their magic books and began to come out of these pagan traditions and myths and ways that they were into. And we're told in verse 20 that the word of the Lord continued to increase and to prevail mightily. But just as always, we once again see those who are not so easily moved. Now, very quickly here, let me take you over to the next slide that we have here for you, because I want you to see this as well. Hold on here just a second here. And let me get back to that. Okay, now, this is the fertility goddess Artemis. And I just want you to understand a little bit of the history about Artemis and who she is. Now, while we find Paul staying in Ephesus, which was a major city in Asia, we're introduced to Demetrius, a silversmith who made silver shrines of Artemis, and these silversmiths made a living making these idols. This is what they made, okay, for the people to buy, and they take these things into their home and they worship these things. So when Paul started teaching about this God that couldn't be remanufactured, this became a big deal. Now, Paul was now messing with the livelihood of these men, and as you can see, and as you can imagine, these things became rather heated. But this is what the idol was that they were making. These are the kinds of things that they made. Now, Artemis, although known throughout history by different names, had been famous for thousands of years. Her name was Artemis in Ephesus, but it was Astaroth in the Hebrew language. It was Astarte in the Phoenician language. It was Ishtar in the Akkadian language. It was Astre in the Anglo-Saxon language. And Easter in the English language. And so it was with most of the ancient little g gods throughout history. They just kept getting a new facelift every few generations. And this is why, my friends, if you Google every major sun god from Tammuz to Horus to Moloch to Baal, all the way on up the line, you'll find that they all have the same birthdays. Imagine that. You know which day it is? December 25th. The Roman Catholic Church simply took our Messiah and threw him into the basket, along with all the other pagan sun gods that were known throughout history. The symbols of Artemis were always the same, no matter what name she came under or what language it was. It was always rabbits and eggs, and she was usually depicted with bare breasts. not to appear erotic in any way, but rather to be a symbol as this fertility goddess and the mother's life-giving milk. Now, there's something else here very quickly that I want you to see here on this website. So let me move this out of the way here very quickly, and let me take you over to the website here very quickly. Here it is. Now, I want you to take a look at this. This is the temple of Artemis. Okay? Oftentimes we think when we read the Bible, we think about these people living with dirt floors and living in tents and all this other kind of stuff. They actually had some major architecture work done out there, and this was a huge temple in Ephesus. This was the main income for the city of Ephesus. The temple of Artemis was among the largest temples in the world. It stood about 400 feet long and 200 feet wide. And it was about half the size of a football field. And inside this temple, there was rather large arrays of arts and crafts and jewelry making businesses and all this type of thing. So the goddess Artemis had a large impact on the economy in Ephesus. So it was no wonder why these silversmiths were all up in arms when Paul came preaching and teaching about a Messiah that they could not remanufacture. I want us to remember, it is written in Exodus chapter 20, verse 4, "You shall not make for yourselves a carved image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth." Unfortunately, most of today's professing Christians wrongly think that they don't have to be bothered with that commandment because it's found in the Old Testament. But the Jews and the followers of the way were well aware of this commandment. And so you didn't find a whole lot of statues of Yeshua or his father because it was forbidden. Now, another thing to notice is that there was a Jewish synagogue in Ephesus. And I want us to think about this because this is very profound. But we really, with this Jewish synagogue that we find that was in Ephesus, we don't really hear about this Jewish synagogue really causing any trouble in Ephesus. And I want us to think about that for a moment. Here's a Jewish synagogue right smack in the middle of this major pagan city, and yet they're so quiet that no one even seems to really notice that they're even there. The Jewish synagogue had been there the whole time, but it wasn't until Paul comes to town that there's a problem all of a sudden. So how active could this synagogue have been right smack in the middle of this pagan city? Kind of reminds you of today's apathetic churches, doesn't it? Today we have homosexuality on the rise, devil worship and demonic shrines setting up next to Christmas shrines. We've got a rising Muslim population, and those who want to tear down the Ten Commandments and take the crosses out of our halls of justice and our national cemeteries. Not to mention Scientology and Oprah Winfrey's newfound religion. We've got ISIS cutting the heads off of our brothers and sisters around the world. All of this. And the church just sits as quiet as a mouse, doesn't it? We've got Catholicism making her move to sweep all of her daughter Protestant churches back under her wing, and prosperity mega churches gobbling up the rest. Christianity is being shredded into 1 trillion little pieces, and the church sits silent. Pastors are afraid to call each other out for not preaching the truth, all preaching oneness and solidarity, while the voice of God our Father screams from the pages of our Bible, "Come out of her, my people, lest you share in her plagues. For her iniquities have reached as far as heaven, and God has remembered her iniquities." Once again, my friends, I ask you, has anything changed? It wasn't until Paul rode into town doing what a true man of God should be doing that this pagan city was rocked. It wasn't until the voice of truth had cut through the darkness like a knife that they were jolted from their bunks. And then and only then were they awoken from their slumber. And some of them woke up to the free gift of everlasting life, and some rolled over and went back to sleep. But know this, that city would never be the same again. Paul had lit a candle in the middle of a very dark cavern, He had thrown a rock into a very calm pond, and chaos ensued. Kind of reminds you of Matthew chapter 5, verses 13 through 16, doesn't it? Let's go back and let's read that very quickly. Very quickly here. Let's go read Matthew chapter 5 very quickly here. And we're just going to read this really quick. 13 through 16 here in the blue. You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored? It's no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet. You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to the whole house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. Kind of sounds like the synagogue in Ephesus had lost its saltiness, doesn't it? Nothing has changed, my friends. Again, nothing has changed. But you and I are about to bring that saltiness back. Let those have the eyes to see, see, and those who have the ears to hear, hear. Now, I'd like us to also think about this. How would you have liked to be Gaius and Artemis? Okay, these were the two guys, these two poor helpers of Paul who had come to Ephesus from Macedonia to assist Paul, and now they're being captured by this mob of people and dragged into the town theater all of a sudden. And of course, Paul, being Paul, is doing everything that he can to get in to rescue them. But the apostles and those who know Paul are stopping him from going into the theater because they fear for Paul's life. And it turns out that it was a good thing that Paul didn't go into the theater. I want us to think about that. What Paul must have been thinking at that moment. And think about Gaius and this Artemis. I'm never going to be able to say that name right. But think about those two fellas and what they must have been thinking. They probably thought that they were dead. And just when they thought that they were dead, they have this Jew that steps up out of nowhere. Alexander, his name was, and he tries to get up and he tries to talk to the crowd so that he can bring the peace back. But when they see that Alexander is a Jew, he's another Jew, they just get louder and they get more angry. And it says for 2 hours they kept screaming that for their goddess Artemis. So now I want us to think about that very quickly for just a moment here. Once again, just as we've said before, this proves that the followers of the way who believed in Yeshua Jesus as their Messiah were not seen as any different from the Jews. The followers of the gospel of Yeshua Jesus were always seen as a sect of the Jews, because that's what we are. And so when Alexander got up to try and speak to the crowd, they saw him as one of the followers of the way, because he was a Jew. And they just got louder. And they wouldn't have anything to do with him because they saw that the Jews and the believers in Yeshua, they saw them as being one. Okay? And this is profound. I want us to understand this. As far as the Gentiles were concerned, and these pagans were concerned, there was no difference between the followers of the way, what we today would call Christians, right, and the Jew. They were the same. They worshiped in the same synagogue. They were always together. They believed in the same Hebrew God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They were the same. Okay? So again, I kind of want to pull us out of this mentality that, the apostles were going and building Gentile Christian churches all over the place. That's not what was happening. That is absolutely not what is happening. And again, we need to read these scriptures and be able to know and to understand, look, what is happening here? The way is being led by Jewish people. Okay? Paul was a Pharisee. He was a Jew. Our Messiah, Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus Christ, was a Jew. Came out of the house of David, the tribe of Judah. And as was prophesied. Okay? So I want us to understand this, that the gospel that had come and what Yeshua had brought in getting rid of the penalty of the law, it is just a continuation of Judaism. It is a continuation of what we know as the Old Testament. It's not something new. And again, the idea that we would call the Old Testament, and the New Testament, again, really was a bad choice of names and a bad choice of words to do such a thing. It is not Old and New Testament. It is one Testament. It is the New Testament is a continuation of the Old Testament, not a new one. It's important for us to see, know, and to understand that those who believed in a very Jewish man by the name of Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus, were not thought of as separate and apart from the Jews. They were always seen as just another sect of the Jews, just like the Essenes or the Samaritan Jews or the Sadducees and the Pharisees, none of which agreed on a lot of things. But they all agreed in the one true God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The followers of the Way were never known as Gentile Christians that were separate and apart from the Jews until around 90 AD. And this is important for Christians today to understand and to see and to know. This just did not happen. It absolutely did not happen. And we can see that through the Scriptures. All of this truth is here between these pages. And all we need to do is read it for ourselves. This anti-Semitism that has dogged Christianity for the last 18 centuries is nothing more than a wedge that has been driven between God's people by our adversary and his minions. We as Christians do worship the Hebrew Israelite God of the Jews, who was himself a Jew, who came from the house of David and the tribe of Judah, just as he was prophesied to come in 2 Samuel chapter 7, verses 12 through 17. And if you've never read 2 Samuel chapter 7, verses 12 through 17, I highly urge you to go back and read it. And there are places all through the Old Testament, the Torah and the Tanakh, that prophecy after prophecy after prophecy of our Messiah. It is just all through, and you just don't realize that until you actually read the first half of the book. So it's important for Christians to understand these things. Now, another thing that I want us to notice is found in verse 35, where we're told that this great stone that belongs to Artemis fell from the sky. Okay, so let's go. I want to go back here very quickly to Acts here, and let's go here to just to 35, and let's just read that here very quickly. It says, "And when the town clerk had quieted the crowd, he said, 'Men of Ephesus, who is there who does not know that the city of Ephesians is temple keeper of the great Artemis, and of the sacred stone that fell from the sky?'" Okay? Now, this was common back in those days. There were all kinds of stories found throughout history about rocks that had fallen from the sky and then became objects of worship by one culture or another. In fact, Islam has a sacred meteorite today that they worship at Mecca. And they've enshrined this black rock and they call it the Kaaba. It's actually a number of stone fragments all bound together in this kind of a special encasing. And just like the Artemis worshippers of Ephesus, Muslims consider their black rock the most holy object of Islam, and millions of people venture to Mecca every year to see this thing. So, I want us to understand this, and I want us to know this. Again, has anything changed? No. Has anything changed between that culture and our culture? No. Our adversary keeps on playing the same tricks, and we keep falling for the same tricks. And you know, that old saying that says, "Those who do not know their history are bound to repeat it," is very true. Very true. Another thing that I want us to notice is the word assembly. Now, this is important for us to understand, found in verse 32. Now, if we look up here in verse 32, okay, we see this word assembly, and I've got it highlighted here in the yellow. Let's read this. It says, "Now some cried out one thing, some another, for the assembly was in confusion, and most of them did not know why they had come together." Okay? So, I want us to take a look at this very quickly here, and I want us to see this, because this word assembly is important to understand. I want us to notice that in most places throughout the book of Acts, and throughout the New Testament, we find the word assembly. And if we look at the Greek word that this is translated from, we find that it's the Greek word ecclesia, okay? I'm going to show that to you because I don't want you to think I'm trying to pull the wool over your eyes here. So let's go to the King James Version, okay? And right here it is. Now let me go to assembly. Right here it is, Strong's G1577, okay? And let me pull up our dictionary here, and let me post that over here. Now, ecclesia is what they are using. That is, then they have translated it into what? Assembly. Okay? Now, do they always translate ecclesia into assembly? No, they don't. This is the exact same Greek word that they will translate as church. So my question is, if the proper translation for ecclesia is church, then why don't they call this angry mob here in this theater a church? It's the same word. And the answer to that, my friends, is that they only want to translate ecclesia as church when they're talking about the followers of the way, so that they can make you think that they were building separate Christian churches. The truth is, they were not. The followers of the way almost always gathered at the local synagogues and worshipped right alongside the Jews. There were very few times that they were told hold on here just a second here. Looks like we have oh, nope, we're okay. I thought we had a streaming problem. But there are very few times that we are told that they were ever separated. Now, we saw that Paul actually separated the believing Jews that he got where? Out of the synagogue, right? Some believed and some didn't. What did he do? He broke them in half because some of the Jews were getting nasty there, and they were chastising the believers. So he took them out. Where did he take them? He took them right next door to the synagogue. Okay, so he didn't build a new Christian church, okay? And again, this is one of the few times that we see that Paul takes them out and he actually separates them. But I want us to understand that in most cases, they worshiped right alongside the Jews at the synagogue, and that's where they usually would worship with. And the followers of the way were always seen as part of the Jewish sect, and even the pagans and the Gentiles saw them as the same. Okay, very important for us to understand. Christianity did not become a separate Gentile religion run by Gentiles again, and I'll say this again, until after 90 AD, well after the destruction of the Second Temple. And we need to understand that. And so at the end of chapter 19, we see the town clerk getting up. And we see this town clerk reminding the people at Ephesus that Ephesus would always be the epicenter of the goddess Artemis, no matter what the Jews thought. And in a nutshell, he reminds them that the Romans would not tolerate this rioting that they were doing right now, all of this chaos that they were causing. And so this town clerk reasons with the crowd, and he brings them back down to earth, upon which time we find ourselves moving into Acts chapter 20. And that's pretty much all that we have for Acts chapter 19. Now, a lot of different things that we found there in Acts chapter 19. And again, we saw this huge temple. We saw this, it gave you a little bit of history as to who Artemis was. And if you look at her different names all the way down through the different generations and what have you, always the same goddess, always eggs, always Easter bunnies and all that other kind of stuff. And it actually comes right down history to Easter, and of course this is where we get our Easter from. And we know, all of us that have been here at Holy Impact Ministries for any length of time know that our Messiah did not die on Good Friday. It is a lie, and it is a lie that comes from the gates of hell, my friends. Our Messiah died on Passover Day, which was known as the Day of Preparation. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John tell us the day that our Messiah died. And so we know this. And again, that we have video teachings on this. So there's just, anyone who reads their Bible cannot possibly believe in a Good Friday. It does not exist, my friends. So a lot of these things that we see in Ephesus, once again, we ourselves in Christianity today are playing with. Our adversary just keeps on using the same tricks. He doesn't even have to come up with anything new. He just uses the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. And again, just as I said, you can Google the birthday of Moloch, Baal, Tammuz, Horus, any of them that you want, Zeus. All of them were born on December 25th. All of these gods lived at different times throughout history, my friends. Don't you think it's strange that they all have the same birthday? December 25th. Can we not see? It's right in front of our faces. And so when we read Acts, and I want to reiterate this again, those people that were there are not so far off from us. Their culture is not so different from our culture. I want us to understand that the things that Paul and the apostles were preaching to them are the exact same words that we need to heed today. We're not any different. And just as Solomon said, there is nothing new under the sun. Certainly not where humanity is concerned. And so this is very important for us to understand. And if we don't learn anything else from the book of Acts, I hope that we learn this, because it is just that important. There is just really nothing new. It's all happening all over again. And we see the rise in all of this paganry and homosexuality and all of these things that were back in the days of Athens and Ephesians and all of these places that Paul went, and in Rome and all of this type of things. It's all raising back up again. It's like vomit that just keeps vomiting up over and over and over and over and over again. And as I said, our adversary doesn't even have to come up with anything new. He just has to keep the wheel going, just keep on doing the same thing over and over and over again, because he knows the next generation is going to fall for the same thing the last generation fell for. And if we don't understand these things, if we don't read the Word of God, and if we don't understand our history, and if we don't ask Him for the discernment, we're not going to be able to see these things. So it's so important that we be walking in His ways. It's so important that we be doing the things of Yahovah God. And I would hope and I would pray this week that you would walk in the ways of Yahovah God, that you would understand the obedience of faith. Understand that the biblical definition of the love of God is that we keep His commandments, and His commandments are not a burden to us. In the name of Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus Christ, I pray that the face of Yahovah God would be upon you and your children, that the hand of Yahovah God would be upon you, and that He would give you the endurance and the understanding that we all need to walk in His ways. In the name of Yeshua HaMashiach, I pray these things over you. With that being said, everybody, we will see you Saturday morning at 9 a.m. And I'm not sure if the website will be up brand new or not, but we're going to try and tackle it to the best of our ability, the best that we can, if not shortly after that for sure. So we'll be looking forward to seeing you then. Until then, our time is up for this evening. God bless you. Thank you so very, very much for being with me and sharing your time with me. It means so much that we take our time out in this busy, busy world in the middle of the week to study the Word of God. God bless you, everybody, and shalom.
Wisdom I seek, and to discern, create in me a heart that is holy. I lift my voice to understand. Father, lead me by your hand. Awaken my ear to hear as the learning, morning by morning. Make your word clear, then open my mouth to speak as the learning, a word in its season to the weak.